Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 20th day of April 2020. Well, it's 420, everybody. So, do what you will. We put some cannabis plants out in the greenhouse a little too soon, and we had a couple of 28-degree nights. And although plants that have been out forever during the season, if that happens in the fall, you stick them out there and it doesn't necessarily bother them, but we didn't even like acclimate them or anything. We just stuck them out there. And they're just basically smoothie plants. And what I mean by that is we don't care if they go to flower. I was just using them in morning smoothies. I like to use fresh leaf. I make my smoothies in a Vitamix, and so it really explodes everything it's just like this really powerful blender, and it explodes everything, and so it almost pre-digests it for you, when it's exploded like that. But I like to use it in that just raw, fresh off the plant, because there's so many healing plant acids in it. It's healing without the high, basically. Because cannabis, when consumed raw, there's no psychoactive effect with it. You're just getting all of the healing properties of the plant, and it's one of the things I did when I was healing my rheumatoid arthritis and bringing it back into remission. So now I have to start all over. But it's time to grow the babies for the summer and for this year's crop, basically. Patients are allowed 6 plants in Oregon at any given time. I don't generally grow that much. My husband and I are both patients, and so we could theoretically have 12, but there's just the 2 of us. So why do you need that? I grow enough to make the medicines that I use, and then just to have some dry for the year. But beyond that, we give the rest to the chickens, and so it's I don't know. We have really good eggs. So it's like you hear about these farmers that have pigs, and they're pig farmers, and the meat is incredible if you give your pigs, your hogs that you're growing for butcher. If you feed them raw cannabis, I guess it really it makes the meat better. So anyway, and no, it doesn't make it. It's like that one guy that came out a few years ago and said, "Oh, I'm going to make cannabis honey because I've got honey I've got bees on my cannabis plants." It's like, no, there's no nectar. They're getting waxes and maybe some resins for propolis, but they're not. If they're on your plants, you aren't going to have cannabis infused honey when you're done. You have to actually do that. You have to do the infusion process yourself to get that. And then you have to be careful that you don't overheat the honey over 105 degrees, I think, because if you do, then it kills all the beneficial stuff in the honey. So yeah, it's complicated. Anyway, I hope you all had a good weekend. I hope you're all staying protected and staying home as much as you can. We had to go out. It was terrifying because we went to the feed store, and whatever protections that were there, they weren't really, I don't know. It was bizarre. So I think from here on out, for the foreseeable future, if I'm going to buy anything from those folks, I'm going to order it online and call them up and, say, okay, I'm coming down there and I'm going to be out in the parking lot. And when I get there, I'm going to call you again and you can bring it to me, because that's what they say they'll do. So that's what I think I'm going to do. And I think it's going to be better in the long run. That way I don't have to deal with people, store personnel that are behaving erratically and scarily and all of that. So I don't know. It's an interesting time, isn't it? It's like we have to do things in a way that we have to really think about now, and that's tough sometimes. You're on autopilot mostly. Let's take a quick look at the astrology. I think I'm going to not necessarily go through each one here. Primarily, the moon is in the 11th house, Aries. We're going to, again, be focusing on networking safely with others. What is on my foot? We're going to focus on networking safely with others, but at the same time, you've got some Aries energy there. And so, if you're kind of maybe rethinking your work situation, um, maybe you've been sending out resumes. Sometimes when things stop and you can no longer do what you're doing, it sort of gives you a time to maybe rethink things. And I think that that's what the astrology is suggesting today, pretty much everywhere. Sun's in 11th house Taurus, so we're going to attend to any issues that need dealing with. Network with friends and associates, but there's a square with Saturn right now between the Sun and Saturn. And I think that may be between that and the Aries influence throughout the chart today. I have to wonder if maybe we're starting to either rethink how we work, the type of work we do. Maybe we've discovered that maybe we can do something out of our home versus going somewhere. And maybe we're starting to think about that. We may end up, with a whole new type of industry when all is said and done here, where more and more work is done from home and we're telecommuting, and how we interact out in the world may also change. We just don't know. I mean, it could all just go back to normal. I mean, we don't know. But what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? We're in a profound change year with a 22 year. So what does that mean? I've been pretty much interpreting it in terms of our perceptions surrounding our relationships with others, because from that, then everything else flows, how we do there with one another, how well we can get along and how we see one another. From there, I think everything else flows. So maybe, Sun square Saturn, if the situation seems untenable, maybe it's time to consider other options. Focus on steady progress and have patience. But trying the South Node, between the Sun and the South Node, something new may be on the horizon. Fundamental change in perception, fundamental change in choices. Let's see, Mercury, 11th house, Aries, same thing. 12th house, Gemini for Venus, same thing. Mars, 9th house, Aquarius, that's the same. Here we have 8th house now in Capricorn for Jupiter. Here's where I think that some of this reassessment is going to be happening. We're going to be reassessing perspective, perception, life's meaning or purpose. Where are we placing our focus? We're going to be showing some restraint with that, though. We need to take a pause and don't jump to the first thing that comes to mind is I think the counsel here. Let's see. Saturn conjunct Pluto. Transformative energies are occurring right now. And this is what I think is aligning it. And some of it I think has to do with the Aries influence as well, though. Great change and growth can occur at this time, either in terms of perceptions or maybe life path. I mean, again, something could change for you during this time that takes you in a better direction or one that you never thought possible. So with restriction can come great freedom ultimately. So use the time to start, not just sit and grumble about the fact that we're doing this, know that you're doing it for a good reason. It's not that, it's for some ridiculous reason, but at the same time, use it to maybe rethink things and reassess things. Saturn in conjunct the North Node, this is also new. Again, you may be forced to change your life's direction now. Or it could just simply be your perceptions surrounding it. Maybe you have this narrow view of what's possible in life. And now you're discovering that, well, okay, but, all kinds of things are possible. And maybe you never had a wide network of people that you're talking to. And now maybe you do because you're safe. I was going to say stuck at home, didn't I? But you're safe at home, right? You're there. And now you've got to reach out to others. And maybe you're discovering new friends on social media that have all kinds of wonderful ideas and options for you to consider. So again, don't sit in your house and not engage with people. Find out what other people are doing and see if it can enhance your own life in this whole time for you. So, this is a time of genesis and positive change. It really is, even though we're going through a really difficult time. Taurus, Uranus, 11th house Taurus. You have to be open to change and new expressions of relationship now. How we're relating is changing, and necessarily so. Perhaps temporarily, perhaps it may be for a longer time. We don't know. Some are allowing their people to go places and do things that don't appear safe to me, and we'll see. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're going to see the numbers on the virus increase. Maybe you're going to see a big spike, but we'll know, won't we? We should know pretty soon, within the next couple of weeks, what the effect of that has been. But I'm hoping that, our state doesn't relax these restrictions yet. I'm hoping that we can, figure things out a little bit more before we do that. Neptune, 10th house Pisces. Again, life's path or direction has been interrupted. Confidence over the future is less. So maybe it's just time to reassess your life goals. The idea now, and I don't know why this always happens, but whenever there's a something kind of, well, like a tragedy or like a tornado and destroys everything or whatever, you not only start figuring out, how am I going to live now, but you also start assessing it from the terms of a spiritual path, perhaps. And sometimes when you have a chance, and a lot of the time this happens when you retire, but you have a chance to rethink your future and do something entirely different, something that gives you a little bit more meaning than just simply the normal 9-to-5 job that we all end up with. We're not always lucky enough to do the kinds of things that we're really passionate about, that give us true spiritual fulfillment. And it is what it is, but whenever we can do that, it's always a good thing, I think, to go in that direction. And that seems to be what the general consensus is, that the things that are changing for us now, we need to, whatever we replace them with, we should hope that it can have, or at least try to make it have, some higher level of spiritual purpose. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today, because it's really just all the, kind of reinforcing itself here. So let's go ahead. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I'm going to take the first 3 cards I have here. I'm going to do the 13th one each time for randomness sake. I may take a 4th. I may take a 5th. I did that twice. I took a 5th twice. Oh my God. The 4th is not uncommon, but I've never done 5 cards before here. One time I did a 6-card reading, though. That was fun. I just laid them down and did them. That's usually how I do tarot. I just lay cards down. I don't take the 13th one each time, unless there's a specific purpose, unless I really, really want to make sure that everything is random. And that's why I'm doing it here this way. When we're done with that, we'll take a rune from the Elder Futhark bag, and then we'll close out with a geomancy rune to sort of bring in and align earth energies into all of this. And so let's go ahead and get started and take our first 3 cards. Well, I've dropped one already. Hang on. It's not the card, but keep it in mind. The 8 of Pentacles, again, diligently working on our craft. Well, we open the reading today with Judgment, a 20th card of the Major Arcana, known as Eon and Rebirth in other decks. It's not about judgment. I don't like the name of that card. But it's just about taking a look back, and maybe again, if we have the opportunity through this time to maybe reassess a different pathway. Let me get better in my chair here. That we can assess a better pathway, maybe one that's more spiritually based, or maybe it's been you've been working in a job where there's not a lot of integrity, and it's. That could be what it's really more about, that maybe you try to find something that at least you can feel good about what you're doing and who you're interacting with while you're there, who you're working with. Maybe you work for a boss that just is not a very good boss, that takes advantage of the customers and lies and does all of that. If that's the case, then you're in a situation where integrity is lacking, and this time you may be looking for that. And so when you look at the card of Judgment, you're talking about a rebirth of sorts, and And with respect to the astrology, it could have something to do with that, in that direction. You know, times like this, you can make a clean break of it, right? At least it feels like it. Here you have the King of Swords. I don't like the kings. You see the sketchy brown clouds in the background, so that's deception. The sword is not fully upright. Let's see if I can get my arm fully upright. Is that it? And he's askew, isn't he? So, not really telling the truth here. So I don't know about the kings. I've never been comfortable with the kings. I'm not comfortable with the emperor. I think that they need guidance. I think they need guidance from the female side that they don't simply have inside them. They maybe are or maybe they're so passive aggressive, you know, that they're manipulative or whatever. The King of Swords can be that way. But the king is usually the problem in any situation. Very, very rarely I read him as the solution. It takes a very strong king to be the solution, and most of them aren't like that. So it's the queen that is. You look at the successful countries around the world that are fighting the pandemic and are being successful about it. These are countries run by women. They're not run by men. Men don't make the right decision necessarily. It just depends on how balanced their polarity is inside. If they've got a healthy balance between masculine and feminine polarity within, then they understand compassion and they understand empathy. They understand the need for support and all of that. Whereas if you don't, then that side of it, the empathy side, the compassionate side, the side that creates the greater understanding for things is lacking. And so often it's lacking in men, especially now, especially if they're patriarchal at all. It's like that, and they need guidance and they won't take it. So that's why dealing with kings and emperors and people, men in authority, especially right now, is so questionable. You really see the difference between those that can handle life effectively, especially when they're in positions of authority over people. They can handle all of that effectively. They're brilliant with it, the ones that can. The rest of them circle the drain, and that's where we're at right now. We're circling the drain. Here we have the Two of Cups, healing and reciprocity. That was about healing relationships. And again, we're talking about that in the astrology today. I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm just going to, let's look at the three cards, and then we'll decide if we need to have a fourth. I think I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Use my tissue, not my hand. I think I'm going to put Judgment in the middle, and we'll have it be the focus of the overarching focus of the reading. Let's see, where did my notes go? Where are you? Go down here. There we go. I was reading the Book of Thoth by Crowley this weekend, and I had it up on the iPad and not Witch Notes. But basically, I want to double check here on Judgment. There it is. Yeah. Okay. So again, it's rebirth and renewal. We see the angel Gabriel. We're going to talk about that cross there on his flag, coming out of the clouds of deception, because let's face it, being in form is filled with deception. So he comes out of the clouds, blowing his horn. Everyone is standing up, rising up out of their coffins. Arms in supplication to Source Presence in their lives. Here we begin anew. We're also asked to see the bigger picture. When you're doing the life review, isn't that what you're doing? There goes my voice already. But isn't that what you're doing when you supposedly do the life review after you pass on? Okay, There's the life review where you go and you rest with your oversoul, and you visit and you talk about what it was like, and maybe start thinking about, or maybe not, maybe you're going to rest a while with the oversoul, but then you're going to be talking about what you're going to be doing, the next go around. And maybe it's related to what just happened, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just something entirely new that you want to do. But basically, when we're looking at the cross there on that flag, I'll show you it again. You can think of it in terms of healing, but you can also think of it in terms of placement. Right now, in terms of where they are, they're somewhere above this abyss. We'll just go ahead and put them up at the top. That's where the soul is sitting right now. But in form, it's going to travel down through. This is one of the reasons I was reading the book of Thoth by Crowley, because it talks about there's a lot about Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and all of it anyway. And I was also reading Lon Milo Duquette's treatise on the Thoth Tarot, because I did a Thoth reading, and this week, I think it was this weekend, or yeah, I think it was over on Patreon. I did it, but basically. I'm wanting to look at how the Tree of Life, in fact, I even did my own Tree of Life last night on the computer, and I put where all of the major arcana cards are on it, and because I just think it's fascinating. So I was just studying that this weekend amongst all the other stuff I was doing. But basically, when you're looking at judgment, you've left the body, and now you're visiting with Gabriel, or your oversoul. And actually, it's your oversoul, not Angel Gabriel, but you're having that contemplation. Now, if you want to do that still here, okay, and you want to attribute judgment to your present form, then it gives you an opportunity to see things in a different way. Now, typically, we hover down at the bottom when we're in form. Some of us maybe climb it a little bit in awareness, when we start to become aware that we aren't these bodies and we're really, the soul that inhabits it. But here's the thing. If you're going through that transition, particularly now, where we're rethinking things, we're rethinking about who we are, what our life's path is, are we living in spirit, then this gives us a moment with the card Judgment to start taking another look at how we see ourselves in the broader scheme of things, and how we see ourselves in relationship to others. Do we see the other as the other side of self, which is the truth, or do we just simply see the other as the other and someone to stay away from and not include in our lives? To see through the eyes of fear and doubt versus the eyes of love. We are fundamentally one when we're not in these bodies. There is no reason why we have to be separate now. Yes, there's an individual experience vis-a-vis the soul's expression in the different lifetimes, but it doesn't mean it's just the expression. It's just the moment of gathering new information that's your creation. And then once that's done, see, then it all comes back. Well, it comes back anyway, not when you're done, really. It's coming back all of the time to the collective, that information. So the bottom line is during this time where we're staying safe at home, we can use it to reassess our perceptions of our entire path forward, right? Our entire life, how we see things, how we see one another, especially if we're having to rely on people that we never thought we would be relying on before. Maybe as someone you weren't particularly comfortable with, but suddenly they're there right now. And you're able, maybe it's a next door neighbor and maybe you don't get along with them normally, but right now, the path opens for that to change and for you to see one another in a different light and maybe drop whatever, weird stuff that might have been going on between you, and realize that when we go forward in shared purpose, that's what matters. And we suddenly want to help that neighbor that maybe we were uncomfortable with before. So again, great healing can happen. There was a thing with Chiron today. I think I forget where Chiron was, but I can tell you, it's not on that. It's right here. Chiron, 11th house, Aries. Woundings are deeply felt, but the space may now open to heal those relationships with others. Groups themselves, and we're not in groups right now, might prove challenging. So if you're networking or something, I was on a Zoom thing yesterday and I didn't talk. I wrote a few things, but nobody really responded to me. And there was a little bit of a dust up on it, you know? So we have to figure out a way to engage with others in a way that while we accept it might be emotionally challenging right now, we have to find a way through it. Okay, so that's all I'm saying there. And so when we see the card Judgment, we're looking at, you know, a 2 energy, 1 of balance. We see a king that's out of balance because you see the sword is askew. We see the sketchy brown clouds behind him. And it's not just sketchy. They seem to be billowing up from the ground. Either that or settling into the ground, but you know what it's like when you see clouds off in the horizon and they look like they're coming up out of the ground. They're just sort of hovering there. To me, what that means is that there's stuff behind the scenes there that he doesn't want us to know about. When you see dark clouds in tarot, think obscuring clarity. Okay, think of obscuring the truth. Think of deception. We still have Uranus. It's a weak aspect right now. Uranus, let's see, semi-square Neptune. And that's guarding against the long plate. Con, it started out a strong influence, was there for a long time, and then it went to a medium influence for a long time, and now it's still in effect, even though it's weaker. But there's deception with the king. Swords is the air element. It's about reason. It's about our intellect. It's about judgment, and not this kind of judgment, but how we function, you know, how we perceive. I mean, if you want to call it that, perception. But it's about justice, fairness, decisions. But here, the sword's going in one direction and his eyes are slightly askewed to his left. So with that, I interpret that to mean someone who's being passive aggressive. It's when the president goes up on the podium and pretends to have a press conference, but instead it's just the time he needs to demean people and to be hurtful. That's really all it is, or to praise his own perception of his own glory, which he has none, right? He isn't helping anybody. He's not helping the states. Instead, he stands up and says, oh, Mexico wants ventilators. He said the same about Germany. Germany's like, what? No, we don't. We're sending ours to other people. What are you talking about? So you have to ask yourself, why the lying? Just to make him seem powerful? He's doing things that cause people to be nervous and afraid that the equipment we need isn't going to be there because we already know it isn't, right? And instead, he's inciting people to go out and protest the closures. What if he's sending them to their death? What if that's what he's doing by doing that? He's bringing in fear of the other, the Democrats, coming for your guns. No, I'm a Democrat. I have guns. I don't need any more. I don't need yours. I'm not coming for your guns. No Democrat is coming for your guns because we're gun owners. All of us. Well, most of us, I would say. Probably not all of us, but a lot of us are. My husband, marksman in the military, still is. Democrat. We're not coming for your guns, folks. We need ours, right? Just like everyone does for safety and protection, for hunting. We don't hunt, but, you know, we have it for protection. My husband was in the military. I don't know why the right can't figure this out. Personally, I think they know, but they like to stir things up and cause problems. But the problem is, you know, if you're going to go out and protest and carry guns while you do it, you're scaring the crap out of people. Now, maybe that's what you want to do, but guess what? Then we don't want to know you. In the final analysis, that sort of response, that sort of behavior will never get you what you want, and it will only complicate your life further. Whatever momentary surge of adrenaline you get out of it, it's not worth it, especially for somebody like this who cannot look you in the eye, who has nonsense going on behind the scenes, and is not about fairness to anyone, not even to the people that support him. That's the sad part about all this. So if we're going to have a change in perception, it has to be predicated upon what's happening to us now. And what's happening to us now is we have a leader that does not know how to lead and can't handle this crisis, never has been able. The people he has in his administration are also inept and incapable of handling this crisis because they don't see it from anything other than a money standpoint. They don't factor in the human life aspect of all of this, and they never have. It's why they could know about this last, October or November, because there's different reports there. Because Americans within the CDC or within WHO or wherever, maybe it was within WHO, they were letting the White House know clear back then. So when they tell you that they didn't know, that the WHO is a terrible thing and we shouldn't fund them because they didn't tell us, they're lying, because they did. And pretty soon, the Americans who told them this stuff, we're going to hear from them. They told Israel back in, November, they let them know. We did. So the White House did. So don't tell me that he didn't know. Don't tell me that all these other people didn't let him know the seriousness of it, because they did. Even China did. They've known. They've known since last year, and they did nothing. So we have a leader and his administration that is clueless, inept. They're not taking care of anything. The small business loan thing, that's supposed to be another one done today, because the other one went to millionaires. What is it they're saying? Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 40 million in profits last year. 40 million they did last year. They got a $20 million loan out of this. But yet the mom and pop restaurant couldn't get it. Or the little store that maybe has 3 or 4 employees, but they can't carry them through this. They didn't get it either. So now they've got to come back and try it again. This time, they still won't get it right, because the people on the right, the Republicans, will not understand compassion. They understand greed and money, but they don't understand compassion. They don't understand the quality of human life. As long as they're doing well, it's fine, but the rest of us, no, doesn't matter. So this is what we're dealing with, and this is why we need a change in perception, a change in understanding about who we are to one another, which brings us to the second card of cups, 2 of cups. We see the line of demarcation between the couple as they step away from, the issues of life that were plaguing them, and they come together in healing and reciprocity. You see the winged sun up there. You see the caduceus below. They're actually serpents wound around. We know that to be the symbol for healing, for doctors. But here you have the man and the woman. The man is reaching out to the woman in love and reciprocity and healing. She stands still, waiting, receptive to his gesture. See, that's the thing. We're all just waiting for people to come home, right? Come back to the family. Come back to the unity that's ours, that blesses us every second of the day. When we're in non-physical, we're merged with one another in loving resonance. There's no reason why we can't experience the same here. Something happened, though, a long, long time ago, where we were set upon a course that has essentially been untenable, even though we've been doing it, But we're locked in this thing of power versus no power, and only getting anything if the powerful agree to it. There's no fundamental, okay, this is how we all need to be. It's why we don't have universal health care in this country. It's why we don't have a basic income that we all receive. It's why we have to pay for college. It's why we pay for electricity. It's why we pay the outrageous prices we pay for insurance. Um, we're set up in a situation of lack, and it's imposed lack by the powers that be versus the powers that aren't. Okay. And it's the way it's always been. It's to keep those in power firmly in power. We've all bought into it. We've not, and unfortunately, we see, and now we've become confused enough that we think that the solution is actually the enemy and the problem. So coming together and with the idea of vote by mail, we've had it in Oregon for, I don't know what, 20 years now or better. I don't know how long we've had it. I think it started in the 90s or something sometime. I'm not even sure. It's been, in other words, it's been around so long that I don't even remember when it started. I mean, I know that I went places to vote, in the 80s. I know I did that here. But at some point, we were voting from the couch. And we've never had any problems. So this notion of, there could be problems, and no. It's the hackable voting machines that are the problems. Yeah. So, vote by mail, it's the thing. Only the Republicans don't want it because they know that if everybody votes, they're not going to get in again. If you had anything worth, voting for, then we would, wouldn't we? But instead, it's you vote your party, irrespective of what that party's doing, irrespective of the person they put up. There's no thought involved. Because we've learned that, thinking about it really doesn't make any difference, does it? It's still going to be what it's going to be. And we've gotten that cynical about it, and maybe rightly so, I don't know. But again, we have a change in perception upon us right now, where people are really things are getting serious, and we're starting to really seriously reevaluate how things are in life. I saw, and I posted this on my Facebook page, I saw this picture. There are several pictures that were taken of this, and it was the most powerful thing I've seen in a long time. It reminds me of Tiananmen Square, and I posted somebody, it must have reminded somebody else, right? Because they did a side-by-side of the two. And the one I'm talking about, where you've got the Chinese man, the student, when they had the student revolution, and he's standing in front of the tank, just on a standoff between him and the tank. Well, yesterday we had, and I'll hurry here because I need to get on this other. But yesterday we had a picture come out on Twitter where you've got a couple of nurses standing in Denver, standing in the crosswalk during a red light. I mean, they move, I guess, when the light turns green. But you've got this woman sticking her head out because she's going to go to the protest, because there's going to be a protest, right, over having to stay home. And she sticks her head out the window, and oh my God. And she's screaming at these nurses, these heroes. They're saving people every day. And she's screaming at him like a lunatic. And somebody's saying that ought to be the National Geographic Picture of the Year, right? Because Tiananmen Square was, that one from that was years ago. And I mean, my God, can we not agree that staying home is going to save lives? Well, apparently not. Well, Othala, the 24th rune of the Elder Futhark, is the rune for today. And we're talking a blend of, it's just all source energy. Here's Othala. And if you're familiar with runes, you can probably see right now Ingus and Gebo. So the sudden release of energy with Ingus, or the seed, think the seed, creation, new direction, new perceptions, all of that. And then you have down below Gebo, balanced energy exchange with others. Now, what you also have is Kebez, literally in every direction possible. The light of spirit informing everything. So it tells you the change in perception needs to go in the direction of spirit. We're seeing the same thing in the astrology, where spiritual concerns are what's really important right now. So, if for some reason you end up with a different job out of this, maybe you're going to want to think in terms of something that is a little more spiritual in nature. So let's see what we have here. Let's see, which one is that? Because I get confused on that. Well, it's a missio. So we're talking about loss. Now, what are we talking about? We talk about a missio. This is the rune itself. Now, it's not necessarily like Tristitia, where it's sadness. This is like an energetic type of loss. So loss of something. I tend to interpret it as the loss of illusion, brought on by whatever deceptive control the king wants to have over everybody. And it's time to wake up. It's time just to wake up and awaken to the truth of who this guy is and the effect that he's having on all of us during this time where we should be staying safe and protected and healing if we become sick. Healing the divisions within and without, healing all of it. We have a chance now to be impacted by the images that we see. And that's why I brought that one up. It was so powerful to see the energy of protection and safety and integrity and dignity and love and trust and I don't know, spirit right there in those crosswalks, in the crosswalk with those two nurses standing there, masks on, arms crossed, in defiance, reminding the people at the light why they're there. And then you have some woman who's sticking her head out screaming at him. I don't even want to know what she said because I'm sure it was vulgar. I'm sure it was demeaning. And that woman needs to wake up because what she's supporting isn't supporting her. Doesn't care if she lives or dies. So, the loss of illusion is what I'll leave you with. Let go of it. That's what it's saying when Angel Gabriel blows that horn and you rise up out of your coffin, arms up in supplication to the word of God, to the blessings of the Lord, or the Great Mother if you believe as I do. Healing is upon us. Healing our relationships with one another, how we see each other. We cannot be like that woman in the car. We must be like the nurses in the crosswalk. You see, that's the transition we need to move into now. So I'll leave you with that. The esoteric influences are up over at Stepping Aside. Check those out if you want to. They're quite long. They deal with numerology for the week, runes for the week, the lunar influences for the week, and then there's a full human design reading for the week. Human design is an interesting thing, very similar to astrology, but it uses the I Ching. So check that out. You might be interested. I just find that system fascinating, maybe even more so, and maybe even more accurate than astrology, but I don't know. Together, I just got the idea. I was doing them and doing one interpretation for each day, but incorporating everything together. And then I thought, you know what? I may be missing some of the richness that each one can give. And so that's why I just changed it from the weekly Rune and Moon to esoteric influences for each week. And so check that out over there at the blog at imsteppingaside.com. Again, I did a 3-point stellium article over on Medium. I think I did a Toth Tarot reading over on Patreon. That's a paid site, so you'll have to actually sign up to support me if you want to read. A lot of the stuff, though, is public. And so if it is, then you can read that. You can at least check out what Patreon's all about. But stuff that's just for patrons, I do a lot of my Foundations in Magic series over there. Initially, I'll film it and then I'll post it over there for a while. And then eventually I release it to YouTube and let it appear there. And then I usually will put it somewhere on my blog. But some of the stuff just is reserved for Patreon. It's just a site that supports artists where you can be a patronage. You can either sign up, and some people do tiers. I don't. It's just a donation. You can donate every month, or you can donate for a year or whatever. Or if you donate 1 month, you don't donate the next if you don't want to. It's really up to the person. Anything that folks do for artists over there and writers and musicians and all of that, everyone greatly appreciates it. Sometimes our work is not always received in a way that helps us monetarily. If we have blogs or we have other things that we do to support our craft, our art, then we need a little bit of offset to help pay for that. And so otherwise it comes directly out of our pocket, which, on the one hand, it's our choice to do it, and it is what it is. But these sites like Patreon and Substack and all, Substack's, I guess, for writers, and journalists, I think use Substack. I thought about it, but I decided Patreon might be more fun. But in any event, that's what that is. And if you're interested in supporting me over there, I'd really love you to do that. I appreciate it so much. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Come back tomorrow. Click subscribe if you haven't. And we'll talk again. Be good to yourself. Be good to one another. And blessed be.